Life can feel heavy sometimes, not because something dramatic happened, not because everything fell apart, but because your mind didn't really rest today. You did what you had to do, you showed up, you kept going, and now, when the world finally slows down, your thoughts don't. They replay small moments, conversations that didn't end the way you wanted. Things you didn't say, things you said and now wish you hadn't. And suddenly, staying calm feels like work. Trying to stay positive feels like pressure. Somewhere along the way, being calm became something you were supposed to achieve. And being positive became something you felt guilty for not feeling. Maybe you've noticed that too, that the harder you try to calm your mind, the louder it seems to get. That the more you tell yourself to think positively, the more exhausted you feel. Tonight is not about fixing that. This is not a place to improve yourself, not a place to change your mindset, not a place to become better, stronger, or more positive. It's just a quiet space to be exactly where you are. Some nights, calm doesn't arrive because you invited it. It arrives because you stopped chasing it. And some nights, positivity doesn't feel uplifting at all. It feels like another expectation you don't have the energy to meet. If that sounds familiar, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just tired. Tired of carrying thoughts all day without putting them down. Tired of holding yourself together for everyone else. Tired of trying to respond the right way to things that never really gave you time to choose. And when you're tired like that, the mind doesn't need instructions. It doesn't need advice. It doesn't need a list of things to practice. It needs permission to slow down, not all at once, not perfectly, just a little. Right now, you don't need to calm your thoughts. You don't need to push them away. You don't need to understand them. You can let them pass, the same way sounds pass in the distance at night. Some close, some far, none of them needing a response. You're allowed to be here without figuring anything out. You're allowed to listen without agreeing, to hear words without holding on to them, to let this moment be incomplete. If sleep comes, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. This time is not meant to lead you anywhere. It's only meant to sit with you while the night moves at its own pace. And for now, that is enough. There's a quiet kind of tiredness that doesn't show on the outside. It doesn't look like exhaustion. It doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it just feels like a low hum inside your chest, a constant effort to stay steady. You might still be functioning, still answering messages, still smiling when needed, but inside, everything feels slightly tight, like you've been holding your breath without realizing it. And when night comes, when there's finally space to rest, that tightness doesn't disappear. It gets louder. Thoughts that stayed quiet during the day start moving again. Not in a dramatic way, just persistent. You remember something small that bothered you, a tone in someone's voice, a look that lingered too long, a moment that didn't sit right, even if you can't explain why. And then another thought follows, and another, not because you want them to, but because the mind doesn't know how to stop on command. Sometimes, what makes this harder is the idea that you should be calmer by now, that after everything you've learned, everything you've been through, you should know how to handle this better. That thought alone can be exhausting. It turns a natural human moment into something that feels like a personal failure. But the mind doesn't work that way. It doesn't calm down because it's told to. It doesn't soften because it's judged. Often, It softens only when it feels safe enough to do so, and safety doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from not being pushed. Tonight doesn't ask you to solve anything. It doesn't ask you to change how you feel. It doesn't ask you to turn this moment into something productive. It only offers company, a voice you can listen to without needing to respond. Words that don't require agreement or effort. You don't have to take anything from this. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to apply it later. You can let it move through you the same way the night air does. Some thoughts may stay. Some may drift away. Both are okay. There's no correct way to experience this moment. Some people relax by letting go. Others relax by simply not holding on so tightly. You don't need to decide which one you are. If your mind wanders, let it. If it stays focused, that's fine too. Nothing here depends on you doing this right. Sometimes calm is quiet. Sometimes it's just less loud than before. Sometimes positivity doesn't look like hope. Sometimes it looks like not adding more pressure to yourself. And maybe that's enough for tonight. Not feeling better, not feeling lighter, just feeling a little less alone with what's already here. You don't have to name your emotions. You don't have to trace them back to a reason. You can let them exist without explanation. They don't need to be fixed to be valid. As the night continues, you might notice moments where your breathing changes on its own. Not because you tried to control it, but because the body knows how to adjust when it's not being rushed. You might notice small pauses between thoughts. Not long ones, just brief spaces. Those spaces don't need to be filled. You don't need to chase them. You don't need to make them longer. Just noticing that they exist is already enough. This moment doesn't need to become meaningful. It doesn't need to turn into insight. It can simply be a moment where nothing is required of you. And if at any point you drift away from these words, that's not a problem. You can come back or not. Both are okay. The night doesn't ask for your attention. It moves whether you follow it or not. For now, you're here, listening, resting in your own way, and that's enough. And when things finally slow down like this, there's often a strange silence that appears. Not the peaceful kind, just a pause where you realize how much you've been carrying. During the day, there's always something to focus on. Tasks, conversations, small responsibilities that keep the mind busy. But at night, without those distractions, you start to feel the weight more clearly. Not as a single thought, but as a collection of unfinished moments. Things that didn't get resolved, feelings that didn't get space, questions that never found an answer. And the mind does what it knows how to do. It tries to make sense of everything at once. It jumps between the past and the future, looking for something solid to hold on to. Sometimes it looks like worry. Sometimes it looks like replaying the same memory over and over. Sometimes it just feels like restlessness without a clear reason. It can be frustrating when this happens, especially if you've already tried to calm yourself down before. Especially if you've told yourself, I shouldn't be thinking about this anymore. That sentence alone can add more tension, because now it's not just the thoughts. It's the judgment about having them. But thoughts don't respond well to pressure. They don't disappear because they're told to. Often, they soften only when they're allowed to exist without resistance. You don't have to invite them in. You don't have to analyze them. You don't have to push them out either. You can let them be there without following them to their conclusions. Some will fade on their own. Some may stay longer. Neither means you're doing this wrong. There's a quiet difference between letting go and forcing yourself to let go. Forcing always carries effort. Letting go doesn't always look like release. Sometimes it looks like staying still long enough for the grip to loosen on its own. You might notice that calm doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't suddenly replace everything you're feeling. It arrives in small ways. A moment where your shoulders drop slightly, a breath that feels less tight than before, a brief pause where the mind stops reaching for the next thought. These moments don't need to be held on to. You don't need to recreate them. You don't need to turn them into progress. They can come and go without meaning anything more. Positivity, too, is often misunderstood. It's easy to think it means feeling hopeful or light. But on nights like this, positivity might look much quieter. It might look like not arguing with how you feel, not adding another layer of expectation. It might look like allowing yourself to be neutral, not optimistic, not pessimistic, just here. There's a lot of strength in neutrality that often goes unnoticed. It's the strength of not needing the moment to be different. Before you allow yourself to rest, you don't have to feel grateful right now. You don't have to find a lesson. You don't have to make sense of everything that happened today. You can let today remain unfinished. Some days don't close neatly. They don't wrap themselves up before night arrives. And that's not a failure. It's just how being human works sometimes. If your mind drifts while listening, that's okay. If it comes back, that's okay too. You don't need to stay focused on these words. They're here if you want them. They'll pass if you don't. There's nothing in this moment that requires your attention. You're allowed to relax your effort, to stop monitoring how well you're doing, to stop checking whether you're calm enough yet. Calm doesn't come from checking in on itself. It comes when the checking stops. You might notice that when you stop trying to settle your thoughts, they begin to slow on their own, not because they've been solved, but because they're no longer being chased. The mind gets tired of running when it realizes there's nowhere it needs to go, and even if it doesn't slow down right away, that's fine. There's no timeline here. Some nights are meant for rest. Others are simply meant to pass. Both are acceptable. As the night continues, you may feel moments where your body feels heavier against the surface beneath you. A quiet signal that it's okay to sink into stillness. You don't have to follow that signal. You don't have to resist it either. You can let it happen at its own pace. Nothing about this moment needs your approval. Nothing needs to be completed before you're allowed to rest. You're not behind. You're not missing anything. You're just here, moving through the night in your own way. And that's enough. And as you stay with this moment a little longer, you may notice that nothing is really asking for your attention anymore. There's no question waiting to be answered. No thought that needs to be completed. Just the quiet continuation of the night. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, but open. You don't need to fill it. You don't need to understand what comes next. Sometimes, the mind relaxes not because everything feels resolved, but because it realizes it doesn't have to resolve anything right now. There is relief in that realization, a subtle easing, almost unnoticeable at first. You might still feel the presence of thoughts, but they no longer feel like they're pulling you anywhere. They pass through more slowly, less insistently, like clouds that no longer carry the weight of a storm. You don't have to watch them closely. You can let them drift at their own pace. The night doesn't mind if you're awake. It doesn't mind if you're tired. It doesn't expect you to perform rest correctly. It simply holds the space where rest can happen. You might feel moments where your awareness softens, not fading away completely, just loosening its grip. There's no need to hold yourself alert. Nothing here requires sharpness or clarity. You're allowed to be slightly unfocused, to let your attention blur around the edges. This moment doesn't need precision. It doesn't need intention. It only needs time, and time is already moving on its own. You may notice that your body feels heavier now, or maybe lighter, or maybe unchanged. Any of those responses are fine. There's no ideal sensation to reach, no signal that means you've arrived at the right place. You're already here. That's enough. Some nights don't bring rest immediately. They bring a gentle pause instead, a slowing, a sense that the effort you've been carrying all day no longer needs to be held quite as tightly. Even if your mind continues to wander, it may do so with less urgency, less pressure. You don't need to correct it. You don't need to bring it back. It knows how to settle when it's no longer being managed. You can let go of the idea that you need to fall asleep soon. Sleep often comes more easily when it's not being waited for. You don't need to prepare for it. You don't need to create the right conditions. You can simply remain here, listening, resting in your own way. If thoughts return to something from earlier today, you don't have to follow them to the end. You don't have to fix what they bring up. You can acknowledge their presence and let them move on without engagement. They don't require closure tonight. Some things are allowed to stay unfinished. They don't lose their value because of it. They don't become problems just because they're incomplete. They can wait. Tonight isn't asking you to carry them. As the minutes pass, you might notice longer spaces between thoughts. Or maybe the thoughts continue, but they feel softer now, less defined, less demanding, like a conversation fading in the distance. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to turn toward it. You can let it blend into the background. Your breathing may change again, or it may stay the same. There's no need to notice it deliberately. The body will do what it knows how to do. When it senses, there's no rush. You don't have to guide it. You don't have to help. The night provides enough space for that. There's something comforting about not needing to arrive anywhere, not needing to improve the moment, not needing to understand yourself better before you're allowed to rest. You don't have to be calmer than you are. You don't have to be more positive than you feel. You don't have to make peace with everything tonight. You can let peace be partial, quiet, incomplete. That's often how it begins. And even if peace doesn't arrive at all, that's okay too. The absence of calm doesn't mean failure. It just means the night is still unfolding. You can stay with it without expectations, without measuring, without checking whether you're doing this the right way. Nothing about this moment needs to be evaluated. You're allowed to disappear into it a little, not fully, not dramatically, just enough to stop holding yourself so tightly. As the night continues to move forward, you don't need to move with it. You can remain exactly where you are, letting time pass around you, There's nothing you're missing by resting here, nothing falling behind, nothing that needs to be caught up with. For now, there's only this gentle passing, this quiet listening, this space where nothing is required of you, and you can stay here for as long as you need. If it comes back, that's okay too. You don't need to stay focused on these words. They're here if you want them. They'll pass if you don't. There's nothing in this moment that requires your attention. You're allowed to relax your effort, to stop monitoring how well you're doing, to stop checking whether you're calm enough yet. Calm doesn't come from checking in on itself. It comes when the checking stops. You might notice that when you stop trying to settle your thoughts, they begin to slow on their own, not because they've been solved, but because they're no longer being chased. The mind gets tired of running when it realizes there's nowhere it needs to go. And even if it doesn't slow down right away, that's fine. There's no timeline here. Some nights are meant for rest. Others are simply meant to pass. Both are acceptable. As the night continues, you may feel moments where your body feels heavier against the surface beneath you. A quiet signal that it's okay to sink into stillness. You don't have to follow that signal. You don't have to resist it either. You can let it happen at its own pace. Nothing about this moment needs your approval. Nothing needs to be completed before you're allowed to rest. You're not behind. You're not missing anything. You're just here, moving through the night in your own way, and that's enough. If this space feels gentle to you, you're welcome to stay. You can subscribe to Peaceful Listening Podcast, so this kind of quiet moment can find you again whenever you need it. There's nothing to keep up with here. Just calm conversations waiting for you when the night feels heavy.